Think about your retirement account for a moment. Think about the house you've worked 20 years to pay off, the gas you put in your truck this morning, and the price of the groceries sitting in your kitchen right now. Now, imagine all of that changing in a single afternoon. We aren't talking about a slow decline or a typical market dip. We are talking about the moment the first missile flies across the Persian Gulf. For anyone over 40, you remember the long lines at the gas stations in the 70s. You remember the feeling of uncertainty that gripped the country. But what is coming if a full-scale war breaks out between the United States and Iran is something far more complex and far more dangerous to your wallet than anything we have seen in our lifetime. This isn't just a story about soldiers and ships. It is a story about your bank account, your 401k, and the very foundation of the American middle-class dream. The world runs on a very thin line, and that line goes right through a narrow stretch of water called the Strait of Hormuz. You might have heard the name on the news, but most people don't realize that nearly 30% of the world's sea-borne oil passes through that one tiny gap. It is the jugular vein of the global economy. If Iran decides to sink a few tankers or lay mines in those waters, the flow of oil doesn't just slow down, it stops. And when the oil stops, the world as we know it changes overnight. We like to think we are moving toward green energy, but the reality is that our trucks, our ships, and our planes still need that fuel. If a war starts, you won't just see gas go up by 50 cents. You could see it double or triple in a matter of days. For a family living on a fixed income or a worker trying to save for retirement, that is a direct hit to the gut. But it's not just about the gas pump. Every single thing you buy is moved by a truck or a ship. When the cost of fuel skyrockets, the cost of bread, milk, and eggs follows right behind it. We have already been dealing with inflation that makes it hard to get by, but a war in the Middle East would be like throwing gasoline on a fire. We are talking about a scenario where the cost of living becomes the cost of survival. And for those of us who are looking toward retirement in the next 10 or 15 years, the stock market becomes a house of cards. Investors hate uncertainty. Nothing creates uncertainty like a war involving a major oil producer and the world's largest military. You would likely see the biggest names in the S&P 500 take a massive hit as global trade grinds to a halt. Your retirement savings, the money you've spent decades building, could lose a massive chunk of its value before you even have time to call your financial advisor. Now, why does Iran matter so much? It's not just another small country. They have been preparing for this for 40 years. They know they cannot win a traditional ship-to-ship battle against the U.S. Navy, so they have focused on what we call asymmetric warfare. They have thousands of fast boats, drones, and missiles hidden in mountains and coastal caves. They don't need to win the war. They just need to make it too expensive for us to stay. And expensive doesn't just mean tax dollars. It means the price you pay at the hardware store. If the U.S. and its allies, like the UK or Israel, get pulled into a direct conflict, it won't stay in the Middle East. We live in a digital world now. Iran has a very capable cyber warfare unit. Imagine waking up and finding out you can't access your bank account because the systems are under attack. Imagine the power grid in a major U.S. city going dark because of a retaliatory strike. This is the new reality of war, and it hits the average American citizen far harder than the wars of the past. We also have to look at our allies and our rivals. China is the biggest buyer of Iranian oil. If we go to war with Iran and cut off that supply, China isn't going to just sit back and watch their economy collapse. They will be forced to take a side. This could lead to a massive breakdown in trade between the U.S. and China. Think about everything in your house right now that says made in China. From your phone to your TV to the parts in your car. If that trade war escalates alongside a shooting war, we are looking at a shortage of goods that would make the pandemic look like a walk in the park. We are talking about empty shelves and prices that stay high for years, not months. For the American consumer over 40, who has lived through the stability of the 90s and the early 2000s, this is a terrifying shift in the world order. There is also the issue of the petrodollar. For decades, the US dollar has been the world's reserve currency because oil is traded in dollars. This gives us an incredible amount of power. It allows us to print money and manage our debt in a way no other country can. But if a war breaks out and countries like China, Russia, and Iran decide to move away from the dollar entirely because of sanctions and conflict, the value of the dollar in your pocket could drop significantly. This is what economists call de-dollarization, and while it sounds like a boring academic term, the reality is that it means your savings buy less. It means your standard of living takes a permanent step down. You've worked hard to build a life of comfort, but the global chessboard is moving in a way that puts that comfort at risk. Let's talk about the human cost for a second, because that also has an economic impact. When we go to war, we spend trillions of dollars, money that could be going toward Social Security, Medicare, or fixing our own roads and bridges gets funneled into missiles and jet fuel. As a taxpayer, you are the one footing the bill. A prolonged war with Iran would likely add trillions to the national debt, which is already at record highs. This leads to higher interest rates. If you are trying to refinance your home, buy a new car, or if you carry a balance on a credit card, you are going to feel that war in the form of higher monthly payments. It's a silent tax that most people don't see coming until it's too late. The psychological impact on the American public is also massive. When people are afraid, they don't spend money. They don't go out to eat. They don't go on vacations. And they don't start new businesses. This leads to a recession. For someone in their 20s, a recession is a setback. For someone in their 50s, a recession can be a disaster. You don't have as much time to wait for the market to recover. You need that money to be there when you stop working. A war with Iran isn't just a military headline. It's a direct threat to the timing of your retirement. It could mean working 5 or 10 years longer than you planned. We also have to consider the ripple effect across Europe and Asia. Our allies in Europe are already struggling with energy costs because of the situation in Ukraine. If Middle Eastern oil and gas are taken off the table, Europe could head into a deep depression. When our trading partners suffer, we suffer. Globalism means that we are all connected. A factory closing in Germany because they can't afford electricity means that an American company that sells parts to that factory loses money. That loss trickles down to the employees and the shareholders. No one wins in this scenario, except maybe the defense contractors. But for the average person watching Clarence Capital, the goal isn't to profit from war. It's to protect what you've already built. The threat of Iran isn't just about their military. It's about their location. They sit on the world island, the central point of trade between Europe, Asia, and Africa. By disrupting this, they can cause a global traffic jam. We saw what happened when one ship got stuck in the Suez Canal for a few days. Now, imagine that happening on a massive scale with the threat of missiles and submarines. Shipping insurance rates would go through the roof. If it costs 5 times as much to insure a ship, the company that owns the ship passes that cost on to the person buying the goods. That's you. Every time you scan an item at the grocery store, you are paying for the safety of those shipping lanes. A war makes those lanes the most dangerous and expensive places on Earth. For the American audience that remembers the Cold War, this feels familiar but different. Back then, we knew who the enemy was and the lines were clearly drawn. Today, the world is much more integrated. Iran has proxies in Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. A war with Iran is a war with a shadow network that can strike at any time. This means the conflict could drag on for years, slowly draining our treasury and our national spirit. It's a war of attrition, where the winner is simply the one who loses the least. But as we have seen in the past 20 years of conflict in the Middle East, the American taxpayer usually loses the most. We need to be honest about the stakes. Politicians often talk about defending democracy or national security, but they rarely talk about the average Joe's savings account. They don't tell you that a war could mean your home value stagnates because interest rates are too high for anyone to buy it. They don't tell you that your pension might be at risk because the companies it's invested in are losing money due to global instability. The reality is that a war with Iran would be the single most disruptive economic event since the Great Depression. It would change the way we live, the way we travel, and the way we plan for the future. As we look at the current tensions, we have to ask ourselves, is there a way out? Diplomacy is expensive and frustrating, but war is far more costly. The problem is that we are reaching a point where both sides feel backed into a corner. Iran feels the pressure of sanctions, and the U.S. feels the need to protect its interests and its allies. When two giants are in a room and neither wants to back down, the furniture usually gets broken. In this case, the furniture is the global economy, and we are the ones sitting on it. Think about the American dream for a moment. It's about working hard, playing by the rules, and being able to enjoy your golden years with your family. That dream relies on a certain level of global stability. It relies on the idea that the dollar in your pocket will be worth roughly the same amount next year. A war with Iran shatters that stability. It creates a new normal where you have to worry about things we haven't worried about in decades. It forces you to become a student of geopolitics just to understand why your electric bill went up or why your favorite store is out of stock. In the coming months and years, the headlines will continue to buzz with news of drone strikes, sanctions, and naval maneuvers. It's easy to tune it out or think of it as something happening over there. But it isn't over there. In a global economy, over there is right in your backyard. It's in your gas tank. It's in your grocery bag. It's in your retirement portfolio. The connection between a missile in the Persian Gulf and the price of a gallon of milk in Ohio is direct and unbreakable. We also have to consider the role of technology in this conflict. We aren't just talking about old-fashioned bombs. We are talking about the disruption of the semiconductor supply chain. While Iran doesn't make chips, the global instability caused by a war could easily spread to the South China Sea, where most of the world's chips are made. If China uses a Middle Eastern war as a distraction to move on Taiwan, then we are looking at the end of the modern tech era as we know it. Your phone, your car's computer, your medical equipment, everything would be impacted. This is the nightmare scenario for the global economy. It's a domino effect where one push in the Middle East knocks over the entire world's manufacturing base. For those of us over 40, we have a responsibility to look at these issues with a clear eye. We have seen how the world works, and we know that nothing is guaranteed. The peace and prosperity we have enjoyed are fragile. A war with Iran wouldn't just be a military campaign. It would be a fundamental shift in how the world functions. It would likely end the era of cheap goods and easy travel. It would force us to become more self-reliant, which might be good in the long run, but the transition would be incredibly painful for anyone trying to manage a household budget today. So, when you hear the talk of war, don't just think about the maps and the generals. Think about the hidden costs. Think about the way a conflict thousands of miles away can reach into your pocket and take a piece of your future. That is the real impact of a war between America and Iran. It's not just about who wins the battle, it's about who survives the economic fallout. You need to know what's coming so you can make the right moves for your family. Whether that means diversifying your investments, paying down debt, or simply being more aware of where your money is going, now is the time to prepare. The history of the world is written in oil and blood. We have seen this play out before, but never with the world so closely knitted together. In the past, a war in one region might take months to affect another. Today, it takes seconds. A high-frequency trading algorithm in New York reacts to a news report from Tehran before the reporter even finishes their sentence. This speed makes the economic impact more violent and less predictable. We are in uncharted waters, and the stakes couldn't be higher for the American middle class. As we wrap this up, remember that your greatest asset is your ability to adapt. We've been through tough times before. The 2008 crash, the pandemic, the inflation of the 70s. We are a resilient people. But resilience requires honesty. We have to be honest about the fact that our economy is vulnerable to what happens in the Middle East. We have to be honest about the fact that our leaders don't always have a plan for the aftermath. And most importantly, we have to be honest about the fact that a war with Iran would change our lives in ways we are only beginning to understand. Keep your eyes on the horizon, keep your thumb on the pulse of the markets, and never stop asking how the big headlines are going to affect your small corner of the world. Because at the end of the day, it's your hard-earned money and your family's future that are on the line. The world is changing fast, and the best thing you can do is stay one step ahead of the curve. That was your friend Clarence. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Check out the next video, Why Your 401k is a Math Trap, the hidden fees and taxes that will eat 40% of your retirement. Take care of yourself, your finances, and most importantly, your time. Good luck.